Welcome back to Decades of Dominance. We're going to cover our ads, starts, and sits for week two. Sean, you want to kick it off with your quarterback picks?
Yeah, so quarterback that I think you should add outside of the top 24 is Gardner Minshew. I thought that maybe the Jaguars were going to pull the lever for Trevor, but obviously Minshew's not going to let them do that. So I would comfortably add him as a quarterback too if you need one. The guy outside of the top 12 who I think will most likely put up top 12 numbers this week is Joe Burrow. Even though they didn't win against the Chargers have an excellent defense, and Burrow looked like the real deal, his arm and his legs. And I think he's got a pretty favorable matchup this week against Cleveland. So Burrow's my surprise start. Of the top 12, consensus top 12 quarterbacks, the guy who I think most likely to be knocked out of that position this week is Russell Wilson. That may come as a bit of a surprise because he did so well in week one, but they're playing against the Patriots defense in week two, which is still pretty good. And I don't trust Pete Carroll not to go back to his old ways of holding Russell Wilson back and relying more heavily on the ground game.
That's some great advice, Sean. I would add my 2 cents here. In the start column, a lot of people drafted Aaron Rodgers as their backup quarterback, and I would suggest bumping him up to your starter.
Yeah, I kind of thought that one was obvious.
Yeah, if it wasn't obvious after week one, consider it obvious.
He looked like the best quarterback in the league in week one.
Running backs.
So running backs again. I'm trying to avoid the super obvious ones here. Um, Obviously, if guys like Naheem Hines or Malcolm Brown are available, you definitely want to run to the waiver wire and get those guys as soon as possible. But a not too obvious pick is Joshua Kelly, the second running back for the Chargers. He's going to be a factor all year long. So if he's not on a roster, he definitely should be. The surprise start. So outside of the top 24 running backs, the guy I think most likely to score within that top 24 is going to be Antonio Gibson for the Redskins. The only reason to me that guys like Barber are getting the ball is because they're trying to work in Gibson slowly, but I think that his workload is going to increase dramatically each week as the weeks go on, and he's got a good matchup and certainly has the talent to take advantage of it. On the other end of that spectrum, for some reason, even though he only put up 2.9 fantasy points in week one, I'm still seeing Mark Ingram ranked within the top 24 running backs. There is absolutely no way I put him in my starting lineup after he was so vastly outplayed by J.K. Dobbins in week one.
Oh, absolutely. I guess I would caution Kenyon Drake owners that the Washington defense made the Philadelphia running backs look pretty terrible last week, although Philadelphia's line was banged up. So it remains to be seen how Arizona's much more potent offense will change that formula. But there's some potential for a low week for Kenyon Drake.
I agree with that very much as well. Also, Chase Edmonds was much more involved in week one than most people thought he would be.
Another worthy ad if he's on your waiver wire. So
Oh,
wide
yeah,
receivers.
definitely. So, wide receiver, a guy outside of the top 60 to add would be Corey Davis. The Titans have said for a while, actually, that Corey Davis is their best receiver, even after A.J. Brown had his good year last year. Don't forget, Corey Davis was drafted fifth overall and is a very talented receiver. Caught a couple touchdowns in the playoffs. Um, he could be this year's Devontae Parker. So if he's out there like he is in most leagues, definitely get him on your team. For a wide receiver outside of the top 36 that I think will put up numbers within the top 36 this next week is Anthony Miller. He put up a good stat line in week one, but he did it not playing a very high percentage of the Bears snaps, and I don't quite know why. If the Bears are passing, Anthony Miller needs to get in there because obviously Allen Robinson is going to take most of the attention, but Miller could definitely feast off that. The wide receiver I recommend you sit, despite all the preseason hoopla that he's healthy now and they have a different offensive coordinator and Baker Mayfield's really going to look to get him the ball this year. They're still just not putting it together in Cleveland. Keep Odell Beckham out of your lineup until he shows otherwise. There's always a ton of wide receiver talent that you can put in there. He's just not worth it.
Agreed on all of those points. For tight ends, your ad this week is Logan Thomas, and I wanted to say that I think that's a great ad. If I watched that game, he had 8 targets, caught 4 of them, 1 for a touchdown, and it could have been more. I mean, a little bit more accurate passing, catches, 6 targets, and looks like a solid starter.
And Washington doesn't really have that much in the receiving department outside of Terry McLaurin, so Logan Thomas could end up being their second best receiver. He was in week 1, and that could continue all through the year.
I also like the Houston tight end that's on waivers. Is it Akins?
Akins. Yeah, I mean, he had that touchdown. I
It was
would.
a really nice grab. It was really.
It was. It was. He's a little more wait and see in my opinion, but definitely on my radar. The start, I don't know if Jared Cook is usually like a borderline start, but this week he's playing against the Raiders pass defense, they're still just awful, especially at safety. So while he's normally a low end play, I think he puts up top 5 numbers this week. So definitely start him. The tight end inside the top 12 that I think is most likely to finish outside the top 12 this week, just like he did in week 1, Evan Ingram. I mean, he's extremely talented, and he was my 5th ranked tight end going into the season, but I really did not like what I saw from him in comparison with the rest of the Giants offense against the Steelers Monday night. So if you have another tight end, I would put them in instead of Ingram until Ingram shows you he has to be started each week.
Absolutely. And based on level of play, I know some of you out there may have Dallas Goedert as your TE2, your tight end 2. I would probably start Goddard this week over almost any tight end 1 that you picked ahead of him. Like if I have, I'd probably start Goddard over Hunter Henry. I'd start Goddard over almost anybody but Kelsey and maybe Kittle if he's healthy, just from how he looked. 10 targets, 100 yards, touchdown. Like just too much usage, too big of a point of the game. And
yeah, obviously Wentz trusts him, and I think we may be seeing a passing of the torch there in Philadelphia. I would start Goddard over Ertz at this point.
Right. I would say just about anybody over. If I have Kelsey and Goddard, I'm starting Kelsey. Is there anybody else you would start over Goddard this week?
Probably not even Kittle because he's dealing with that knee issue.
Exactly.
Mark Andrews, I would start over Goddard. So
Good.
Definitely Kelsey, definitely Andrews.
Waller?
And then, honestly, it's a toss-up between, I think, both Cook and Goddard. I think both of them finish in the top 5.
Right. So if Goddard's your tight end,
yes, I would start both of them over Waller.
Don't hesitate to put Dallas Goedert as your TE1 this week until he proves otherwise.
Yeah.
Well, that's our week 2 recommendations. We wish you the best of luck, and Decades of Dominance is signing out.